Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive.
Always fun to dive in.
Today, we're going back in time a bit.
Back in time.
Yeah, to 1989 to unpack this classic Harvard Business Review article called The Origin of Strategy
Okay.
by Bruce D. Henderson.
Yes, Henderson.
What's really cool about this piece is that Henderson uses all these examples from biology and the natural world
Oh,
to
interesting.
help us understand how businesses compete.
Hmm.
By the end of this
You like that?
deep dive, you'll have like a whole new lens for viewing competition
All right.
and be able to think more strategically about your own path to success.
I love it.
So,
Let's get into it.
where should we even begin with this?
Well,
I mean, this is...
It all starts with this idea that competition actually comes before strategy.
Oh, wow.
And
Very
Henderson
close.
illustrates this with an experiment
Interesting.
by G.F. Gause,
Okay.
who studied two species of protozoa.
Protozoa.
Yeah. And he found that if the protozoa were different species, they could survive together in a bottle with plenty of food.
Okay.
But if they were the same species, only one survived.
Oh.
So that led to,
only one could win.
this led to Gauss's principle of competitive exclusion,
Okay.
which states that no two species can successfully exist if they make their living in the same way.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
But how does that apply to business, though? I mean, how...
Well, Henderson says this principle applies to all living systems.
Okay.
Right, exactly. You're competing for attention online.
That's true. I am competing for attention online.
Exactly.
That's so fun.
It's everywhere. And just like in nature, the fittest survive in business, too.
Oh,
Henderson uses Darwinian natural selection,
okay.
the idea of random chance adaptation and survival of the fittest, to explain this.
So businesses kind of evolve and adapt just like species do.
Right.
But I'm a little confused about that. I mean, businesses have CEOs and marketing plans and, all these things.
Yeah.
Like, they don't just randomly change like a giraffe's neck getting longer.
Over generations, right.
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
So humans, and by extension businesses, have this ability to imagine and to use logic
Okay.
to create their own advantages.
Oh.
We can look ahead and plan and make changes in a much more deliberate way.
So it's not just like totally random. Like it's not just like the business is just floating in the wind.
Well, this, according to Henderson, is the birth of strategy. Oh, so we're not just stuck with random chance.
Yeah.
We can kind of take control of our own destiny, at least to some extent,
Right.
by thinking strategically.
Exactly.
Okay.
Strategy is all about understanding the competitive forces around you, identifying your strengths, and making smart moves to expand what you do best and kind of outmaneuver the competition.
Oh, I see. So you're not just letting the waves
Right.
crash over you. You're actually
You're a surfer.
trying to ride those waves.
Exactly. You're trying to, you're trying to ride those waves. You're trying to steer.
Okay. I'm starting to see the connection here.
Okay.
Competition is all around us. It's a fact of life.
It is.
But we can use strategy to kind of help us win.
Now you're getting it.
Okay, good.
And going back to Gauss's principle,
Okay,
remember, no two species can coexist in the same way.
right.
This means every business needs a unique advantage, or what we call a niche,
Okay,
where it excels.
okay,
It's not enough to just be good. You have to be different
okay.
to truly thrive.
That makes sense.
And Henderson uses the example of Sears, Kmart, Walmart, and Radio Shack.
Okay, so like big
Big retailers.
retail kind of chains.
Yeah, they all seem somewhat similar on the surface, right?
Yeah, kind of.
But each one carved out its own place in the market,
Oh.
a niche where it had a unique advantage.
Can you give me an example of how they were different?
Sure. So think about Walmart.
Yeah.
They were all about price,
Okay.
offering the lowest prices possible.
Got it.
Kmart, on the other hand, might focus on convenience,
Okay.
with locations that are easier to get to,
Okay.
maybe a wider range of services.
Okay.
Radio Shack back then was all about specializing in electronics.
Right. So even though they might seem similar at first glance,
Right.
they each have their own...
Their own flavor.
Yeah, their own flavor, their own way of appealing to customers
Exactly.
and finding their own space in the market.
Exactly. And this idea of differentiation can be based on all sorts of things.
Okay.
It could be price, like with Walmart, or offering a product or service with unique functions.
Yeah.
It could be all about time,
Okay.
like offering faster delivery.
Yeah.
Or more convenient hours.
Okay.
Even location can make a huge
Oh,
difference.
location.
Think about a gas station right off a busy highway exit.
That's strategic.
That's strategic.
That is strategic.
All right.
That makes me think of all those fancy coffee shops.
Oh, yeah?
that
Yeah.
seem to be popping up on every corner now.
Everywhere.
They're all selling coffee.
Right.
But
Some focus on the atmosphere.
yeah, some are all about speed.
Yeah.
Some are known for their ethically sourced beans or whatever.
Right.
They're all trying to find their own special place
Exactly.
within that larger coffee market.
That's a perfect example. And you know what's really interesting?
But,
Differentiation can also be based on perception.
oh,
Think about how brands use marketing to create an image
okay.
in the minds of their customers.
I see. So it's not even necessarily that the products are different. It's just how people think about them.
Exactly. Perception can be a powerful force when it comes to building a competitive advantage.
Totally.
And here's where Henderson challenges a very common misconception.
Okay.
He says that chasing market share is a pointless pursuit.
Wait, what? Isn't market share kind of like the holy grail of business?
That's a common myth.
Yeah, I thought everyone was always trying to get more market share.
That's what we're told.
Yeah.
Henderson says that every business already has 100% of its own market, instead of trying to steal market share from your competitors.
Okay.
The real goal is to expand the size of the market,
Ooh.
where you have a clear advantage.
So instead of fighting for scraps,
Right.
you create a whole new feast.
Yeah.
Wow.
Expand the market where you win.
I never thought of it that way.
It's powerful.
Can you give me an example of how a company's done that?
Absolutely. Let's look at the Ford Mustang.
Okay, Ford aside.
Back in the 1960s, Ford didn't try to beat other car companies by building a slightly better sedan.
Right.
They created a whole new market, the pony car market,
Okay.
with a sporty and affordable car that appealed to a younger generation.
So instead of battling over the same slice of the pie, they just baked a whole new pie.
They baked a whole new pie.
And had 100% of the market share for it.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah, another great example is Coca-Cola in Japan.
Okay.
They didn't just try to outcompete the existing Japanese soft drink brands.
Right.
They expanded the market
Okay.
by introducing new flavors and products that were specifically designed for Japanese tastes.
So it's all about finding new ways to meet customer needs
Exactly.
that aren't being addressed by anyone else.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
This brings us to another key point,
Okay.
defining your advantage.
Right.
Henderson argues that a company's advantage lies at the point where a customer can't tell the difference between it and a competitor.
Oh.
Think about it.
So it's like when a customer is looking at two products and says, yeah.
These are basically the same.
Right.
I don't care which one I choose.
Right.
That's the boundary.
That's the boundary. And the key to success is pushing that boundary outward
Okay.
by offering more value to the customer while still maintaining a healthy profit margin for yourself.
So it's kind of like a balancing act.
It is.
You're trying to give the customer just a little bit more in
Yeah.
the competition without giving away too much of your profit.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Strategic competition actually compresses time.
Oh, okay.
It accelerates the evolutionary process.
Oh.
While natural selection might take generations to play out, strategic competition can lead to radical changes in a very short period of time.
So instead of waiting for things to slowly evolve,
Right.
companies can kind of make these strategic moves
Yeah.
to shake things up,
Yeah.
to disrupt the market.
To completely disrupt the market.
Wow. Okay. I'm curious to learn more about how that works. Well, this is where Henderson draws some fascinating parallels between business and warfare.
Oh, warfare.
Yeah, he talks about how the declassification of British War Office files from World War II
Okay.
showed just how important things like perception,
Okay.
intentions, and the ability to predict your opponent's next move are to achieving success.
So it's not just about
Right.
brute force or having the most resources. It's about,
It's about outsmarting.
outsmarting your opponent.
Exactly. And this is where Henderson's ideas begin to diverge
Okay.
from traditional economic theories.
All right, now we're getting into some deep waters here.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this clash between Darwin and the economists.
Okay, so traditional economics often assumes that people and businesses act in a purely rational, self-interested way.
Okay, I can see that.
But Darwin's theory of natural selection focuses on the importance of adaptation, competition, and survival of the fittest.
Okay.
Henderson believes that Darwin's ideas provide a much more accurate and nuanced picture of how businesses actually compete in the real world.
So it's not just about perfect logic and self-interest.
Right.
It's about being able to adapt to a world that's constantly changing
Yeah,
and understanding how to outmaneuver your rivals.
exactly.
Interesting.
Henderson even quotes Darwin to make this point.
Okay.
Darwin wrote, Some make the deep-seated error of considering the physical conditions of a country as the most important for its inhabitants, whereas it cannot, I think, be disputed that the nature of the other inhabitants with which each has to compete is generally a far more important element of success.
Oh, that's powerful.
It is.
He's basically saying that
Yeah.
the competition is more important than the playing field itself.
The other players,
Yeah.
the other inhabitants.
So how do we use this knowledge
Right.
to improve our chances of winning?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
And the perfect place to pick up in part 2
Oh.
of our deep dive.
Okay, so stay tuned, listeners. This is just the beginning of our exploration
It is.
of this fascinating world of competition and strategy.
I love it.
We'll be right back after this.
Welcome back.
So before the break, we were talking about how Darwin's ideas on competition provide a more accurate picture of business.
Yeah, than these like traditional economic theories.
Right, and I think we ended with my question about
You asked a great question.
how can we use this knowledge to improve our chances of winning?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it actually leads us perfectly into Henderson's 5 core elements
Okay.
of strategic competition.
5 core elements.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm all ears. Lay them on me.
Okay, so Henderson says you need to understand the system, predict outcomes, be willing to commit resources, assess risk, and then take action.
Okay, let's unpack those one by one.
Okay.
What does he mean by understanding the system?
So think of it like a giant chess game.
Okay.
If you only focus on moving your own pieces, you'll get crushed.
Okay.
You need to see the bigger picture, the entire competitive landscape.
Got it.
Who are the other players? What are they trying to achieve? What are the rules of the game, both written and unwritten?
Yeah.
How do different actions and reactions ripple through the system?
Mm-hmm. So it's not just about knowing your own business.
It's about the whole system.
It's about understanding how your business fits into that larger competitive environment.
Exactly.
Okay, what about predicting outcomes? That sounds pretty tough.
It is tough, but it's at the heart of strategic thinking.
Okay.
You have to anticipate how different actions will play out, how your competitors will respond, and how the whole market might be affected.
So if I do this,
Right.
then they're going to do that.
Exactly. Imagine you're launching a new product.
Okay.
What are your competitors likely to do?
Right. Are they going to copy me?
Will they try to copy you? Will they lower their prices, or will they ignore you entirely?
Yeah, okay.
It can tip the balance.
It really helps me visualize how things can shift so quickly
They can.
in a competitive market.
Yeah, it's a dynamic.
Okay, so you understand the system.
Right.
You can predict outcomes. Hopefully.
Mhm.
Hopefully. What's next?
Resource commitment.
Resource commitment. Okay.
This is where strategic competition really diverges from natural selection.
Okay.
In nature, things change very gradually over time.
Mm-hmm.
But in business, you often need to be bold, placing big bets and committing significant resources, even if the payoff is uncertain or far into the future.
That sounds risky.
It is.
How can you minimize that risk?
That's where assessing risk comes in.
Okay.
You need to weigh the potential rewards against the potential downsides.
Okay.
Really understand the probabilities and make smart decisions about where to place your bets.
So it's not just about being bold, it's about being calculated.
Calculate, exactly.
Okay. I can
Yeah.
see how that fits into the overall picture.
Right.
You have a plan, you've weighed the risks.
What's the final element?
What's the final element?
Action. This is where the rubber meets the road.
Okay.
All the analysis and planning in the world is worthless if you don't actually do something. You need to have the courage to make decisions, commit the resources, and execute the strategy you've developed.
So it's like that saying, a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow.
Exactly. You need a good plan, a sound strategy, but you also need to be able to adapt as circumstances change.
Right, because things don't always go according to plan.
They never do. And remember, strategic competition compresses time.
Okay.
Things can change very rapidly.
Right.
So you need to be able to react quickly and decisively.
That's right.
And that brings us back to Henderson's comparison
Yeah.
between business and warfare.
We were talking about Darwin's influence
Yeah.
on Henderson's thinking, but he also uses examples from warfare
He does.
to illustrate his point
To illustrate his point.
about competition. And it seems a little intense to compare business to warfare,
Yeah, it is.
but I guess it highlights that.
It does.
In both cases, the stakes can be very high.
Absolutely. It's a stark analogy,
Mhm.
but it gets the point across.
It does.
Competition is not a game. It's about survival, about outmaneuvering your opponents and achieving dominance.
It's fascinating to me how he draws all these parallels
Right.
between business and biology and warfare.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's saying that competition is this fundamental force
It is this underlying
that drives everything,
Right. Yeah.
whether it's in nature or on the battlefield,
Right.
in the boardroom.
It's everywhere.
It seems like what Henderson is saying is that competition is everywhere.
It is.
And it's important to understand how it works
Yeah.
so you can use it to your advantage.
To your advantage, exactly. And
It's making me think about how crucial it is to build a company culture
oh, interesting.
that encourages strategic thinking,
Okay.
supports intelligent risk-taking, and empowers people to take action
Yes.
based on the insights they have.
I couldn't agree more.
What do you think about that?
I think those factors are absolutely critical
Yeah.
to achieving success in a competitive environment.
So we've talked about these 5 core elements: understanding the system, predicting outcomes,
Yeah.
resource commitment, risk assessment, and action.
Right.
Those are like the building blocks
They are the building block
of any successful strategy.
of any successful strategy in business, in your career, even in your personal life.
Oh, I like that you mentioned that these principles can be applied to our personal lives.
Oh, absolutely.
We've mostly been talking about business.
Yeah.
But this all seems very relevant
It is.
to how we approach our careers, our relationships, even our hobbies.
All of it.
What do you think?
I completely agree.
Yeah.
The concepts we've discussed today could be applied to almost any aspect of life where there's some form of competition.
You mentioned earlier how Henderson points out that victories and defeats often hinge on perceptions,
Yeah.
on commanders' understanding of each other's intentions.
It's all about perception.
Do you think that's true in business as well?
Absolutely. It's a reminder that things aren't always as they seem.
Right.
Perceptions, biases, and miscalculations can have a huge impact on the outcome of a competitive situation.
That reminds me of all those stories about companies
Well, yeah.
that missed out on major technological shifts or market trends
Right.
because they were too focused on their own internal view of the world.
They had blinders on.
They failed to accurately assess the competitive landscape.
Yep.
And they paid the price.
And they paid the price. Great example.
Yeah.
And it highlights how critical it is to constantly challenge your own assumptions.
Right.
Seek out diverse perspectives and be willing to adapt your strategy as the world changes around you.
And, you were talking about Darwin earlier.
Right.
But another fascinating perspective comes from Edward O. Wilson
Oh, yes.
and his work on sociobiology.
Sociobiology.
Yeah. Tell me more about that.
Okay, so Wilson's work on sociobiology is all about how social behavior has evolved through natural selection.
Okay.
He argues that many aspects of human behavior, including competition, cooperation, and altruism,
Oh, wow.
can be understood in terms of their evolutionary origins.
That's fascinating.
Just as animals compete for resources and mates, humans compete for status, wealth, and power.
So how does Wilson's work connect to what we've been talking about with Henderson and business strategy?
Well, if we think of businesses as collections of individuals who are all competing
Right.
for resources and advancement,
Okay.
then Wilson's insights into the evolutionary roots of social behavior can help us understand the dynamics of competition within organizations.
Oh, within organizations.
Yeah, things like office politics,
Hmm.
power struggles,
Yeah.
formation of alliances
Yeah.
can all be seen through the lens of evolutionary psychology.
That's a really interesting connection.
Yeah.
Because it makes you realize that competition isn't just something that happens between companies.
Right.
It's also happening within companies, between individuals and teams.
All the time.
All the time.
Exactly. And understanding these dynamics can be really helpful in developing effective leadership strategies
Okay.
and building a more cohesive and productive work environment.
All of this is so fascinating.
It is.
It's really changing the way I think about competition and strategy.
Good.
It's not just about beating the other guy.
It's not.
It's about understanding the complex dynamics of the system,
Right.
making smart decisions, taking calculated risks,
You get adaptable.
and being adaptable.
Exactly.
Is there anything else that stands out to you from Henderson's work that we haven't covered yet?
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I find particularly insightful
Okay.
is his emphasis on the subjective nature of competition.
Oh, the subjective nature.
He reminds us that the battlefield isn't always objective.
Okay.
It's often shaped by biases, assumptions, and miscalculations.
Interesting.
What we perceive to be true, what we believe about our competitors in the market, can have a huge impact on our decisions
Yeah.
and ultimately our success or failure.
Yeah. I love that point.
Yeah,
It's such a good reminder to stay humble
to stay humble.
and to always be questioning your own assumptions.
Question those assumptions.
Yeah, what we believe to be true isn't always the reality.
Right.
And that can lead to some pretty big mistakes. if we're not careful.
Big mistakes.
I'm curious, are there any specific tools or approaches for developing strategy
Tools and approaches.
that Henderson recommends?
That's a great question, and one that we'll definitely need to explore further.
Okay.
Henderson has written extensively on various strategic frameworks and methodologies.
Oh, cool.
And I think those would be a perfect topic for a future deep dive.
Okay. So I'll be sure to let our listeners know to stay tuned for that episode.
Yes, please do.
For now, I think we've given them a lot to think about.
We have.
We've explored the origins of strategy,
Mm-hmm.
the 5 core elements of strategic competition,
Right.
the importance of understanding the system,
Yes.
the role of subjective factors,
Mm-hmm.
the parallels to biology and warfare,
Yeah.
and the need for adaptability and continuous learning.
We've covered a lot.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Bruce Henderson's The Origin of Strategy.
It's a good one.
Before the break, we were talking about how Edward O. Wilson's work in sociobiology
Oh, yeah.
helps explain the competitive dynamics that
Right.
play out within companies.
Inside companies.
Yeah, it's fascinating how competition isn't just between companies. It's
Yeah.
also between individuals and teams
All the time.
within organizations.
Yep.
Thinking about everything we've covered in Henderson's article.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it really is.
It's dense.
It's giving me this whole new perspective, not just on business,
Yeah.
but on my own personal competitive environment. You know, it's making me think strategically about my work,
Yeah.
my hobbies, and how I approach challenges in my daily life.
Right.
It's almost like we're all playing our own little game of strategy,
We are.
even when we don't realize it.
I think that's a fantastic insight.
Yeah.
And it really speaks to the broader relevance of these principles. Henderson may be writing about business,
Yeah.
but these core concepts of competition adaptation and seeking advantage,
Yeah.
they apply to so many aspects of our lives.
It's funny. I remember reading this article years ago in business school
Okay.
and thinking, well, this is all very interesting, but I'm not sure how it applies to me.
Right.
Now, years later, it's all clicking into place.
It's
It's like that Darwin quote you shared earlier
Yeah.
about how the nature of the competition is even more important than the playing field.
Powerful quote.
It is a powerful quote.
Yeah.
It's not just about the external environment.
It's about the other players.
It's about who we're competing against and how we choose to engage in that competition.
So true. And I think one of the most valuable things we can do is consciously apply these principles to our own lives,
Okay.
to ask ourselves questions like, where do I hold an advantage? Or how can I expand that advantage? Or what are the competitive forces at play in this specific situation?
Yeah, it's like suddenly seeing the Matrix.
Right.
All these hidden patterns and forces
Yeah.
that were always there, but we never really noticed before.
And once you start seeing those patterns, you can begin to make more strategic choices
Yeah.
that lead to better outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
In all areas of your life, you become more adaptable, more resilient,
Right.
able to navigate challenges and achieve your goals more effectively.
So what's the best piece of advice you'd give to our listeners who are ready to start thinking more strategically about their own lives?
Well,
Where do they begin?
I think the most important thing is to cultivate a mindset of curiosity
Okay.
and continuous learning. Always be asking questions, seeking out new information,
Okay.
and challenging your own assumptions. Don't be afraid to experiment, to try new things, and to learn from your mistakes. Remember, strategic competition compresses time.
Right.
It's not just about surviving, it's about thriving by adapting and evolving faster than your competition.
That's great advice, and it makes me think about all the future deep dives we could do.
Oh, yeah.
Exploring specific strategic frameworks,
Yeah.
tools, and real-world examples of companies that have used these ideas to achieve incredible success.
I'm already excited for those episodes.
Me too.
I think the more we all learn about strategy, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the complexities of the world
Absolutely.
and create a more prosperous and fulfilling future.
That's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
To wrap up today's deep dive,
Right.
we started by exploring Bruce Henderson's idea that competition predates strategy. We learned how businesses, just like species in nature, are constantly competing for resources and survival.
Right.
We talked about the importance of differentiation, finding your niche,
Yes.
and expanding your market instead of chasing market share.
Expanding the market.
We also looked at the 5 core elements of strategic competition,
Right.
the parallels to warfare and sociobiology,
Fascinating stuff.
and how these principles can be applied to our own personal lives.
I love that.
And perhaps most importantly, we've emphasized the need for adaptability,
Yeah.
continuous learning, and a mindset that embraces challenges as opportunities for growth.
It's not just about winning. It's about constantly evolving and striving to become the best version of ourselves, both personally and professionally.
So to our listeners, we challenge you to take these ideas
Yeah.
and apply them to your own lives. Where do you hold an advantage?
Yeah. Where do you win?
How can you expand that advantage?
What are your strengths?
What strategic moves can you make today to shape a better tomorrow for yourself and those around you?
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.